Hi, everyone. My name is Guy with Rhumbix, and my role here today is to introduce you a little bit to the Rhumbix platform and the problems that we're trying to solve for the construction industry as it pertains to field data capture. A little bit about me. I've been with Rhumbix for 8 years, and prior to that, I spent 10 years with Bechtel, bounced around the world with them building airports, motorways, and mining infrastructure on 5 different continents. A little bit about Rhumbix. We are a San Francisco-based technology company. We've been doing this for about 9 years now, and very much focused on digitizing the field data capture processes for specialty self-performed contractors. Rhumbix works really, really well for folks who are either just getting started with field data capture, maybe those who are struggling with paper-based workflows for things like timekeeping, production tracking, time and materials tracking, or maybe even for companies that have already embraced digitization in some ways, but maybe they've jumped on board and digitized with multiple different tools for different workflows. And maybe they're struggling to make the most of those investments, struggling to make sense of the data, and are looking for different ways to maybe change tack, adopt different technologies that allow them to make the most of that information that they're capturing in the field. So the role here today is to show you a little bit about Rhumbix, demo the product, talk to you about how we're trying to approach the problem perhaps a little bit differently from others in the market, and some of the benefits of adopting a solution like Rhumbix. So with that in mind, I'm going to move over and do a quick introduction to the Rhumbix platform, and then we'll demo the product. So a little bit about the Rhumbix company. Rhumbix, San Francisco-based technology. We've been doing this since about 2013. The background to Rhumbix was a large project in Chile where myself and Zach, the CEO and co-founder of Rhumbix, was spending many, many hours a day and a week trying to process paper time cards for about 7,000 craft workers. So the genesis of Rhumbix was this large mega project where all the information on a $3.5–4 billion project was captured on paper. And it was the challenges that we experienced of trying to digitize that information across this huge mega job where the idea of leveraging technology really became apparent. And this was back in 2012, 2013. So we didn't really have the ubiquity that you see now of iPhones and apps and broadband and LTE and cloud computing that has really made a solution like Rhumbix apparent. And what you've observed is over the course of the past 10 years or so, between 2012 to now, the adoption and evolution of all of those enabling technologies that has made apps and cloud-based technology so much more relevant in construction. And that's been both the blessing and the curse, because you've seen people adopt, but you've also seen a massive emergence of different solutions for similar problem sets that has moved the industry from having very few solutions to having, far too many. And it's made selecting technologies much more difficult for contractors, because all of a sudden you have an amazing choice, but how do you actually stitch all of those together in a way that is coherent? And so really what we're trying to do at Rhumbix is give technology solutions to contractors that actually make that selection process a lot easier, and give people the opportunity to consolidate and standardize where they may have invested in multiple different tools in the past, that now they're struggling to make the most of them, particularly in the current economic climate where, technology spend is beginning to get a bit more of a focus from CFOs and, IT teams in general. How can people consolidate their spend, consolidate their solutions, and make the most of that data? So Rhumbix, we call ourselves a foreman's digital tool belt. You're unlikely to send your craft workers out in the field with tools that are suboptimal in terms of quality or application, or maybe unsafe. We think about it the same way from a foreman's digital tool belt perspective. Send your foreman out, your craft workers out with the best possible tools available for them. So practically, what does that mean? When we set out to build Rhumbix many years ago, our focus was on labor productivity and performance measurement. And what we realized very quickly was that in order to do that practically, you first needed to solve the problem of timekeeping. And realistically, what we discovered when we were building the company is that many, many people in the United States and North America in general were still really struggling with paper-based timekeeping. That was creating all sorts of challenges around latency, data quality, redundancy, and administration, issues with getting data from the field into payroll and ERP systems in a timely way. And that practically, if you wanted to improve anything downstream of the ERP and timekeeping, it needed to improve the timekeeping process first and foremost. Fundamentally, ERP is an excellent tools at what they do, but they're very finance and accounting centric. So if you want to separate timekeeping and the data that it contains and the insights that it can deliver, leveraging the ERPs to drive those processes can create challenges in terms of latency. Everything has to wait until payroll has been run before you can deliver insights off the data. And practically, the ERP will store data in the way it needs to retain it. And if that is at a different level of detail or a different set of contexts and insights than you're looking for, then using ERP first for that information can actually create some challenges. So having that data in a bespoke solution like Rhumbix actually gives you opportunities to report off it in ways that many ERPs don't support. So timekeeping was always front and center of what we needed to build to ultimately deliver on our value of better labor productivity and performance measurement. What we realized thereafter actually is once you've developed and delivered timekeeping, you've created an ecosystem where the foremen have at their fingertips a very powerful tool that they need to use every single day. Timekeeping is best done daily. Many people do it weekly. And so actually, once you've got your foreman using a digital tool like Rhumbix, there are other workflows that can be delivered off the back of that. So production and progress reporting off the back of timekeeping delivers your labor productivity metrics, delivers your opportunity to move the needle on work in progress reporting and develop those metrics at least weekly in the current reporting period, but maybe even daily for companies that are looking to move that way. So timekeeping and production and progress reporting delivers the opportunity to understand more effectively how you're actually performing in the field. Ties into planning, ties into your workforce management, aligns with sort of short interval planning and pull planning and things like that if you really want to get into the real detail of it. Beyond that, timekeeping is for your base scope. We've delivered the ability to digitize T&M tickets in the platform as well. So T&M tracking is one of those work processes that remains perpetually paper-based, and people are really, really struggling with it. T&M tickets allow you to digitize work that is either out of scope or projects that are fully reimbursable. Maybe, excuse me, maybe where there's a need to create a T&M ticket every single day. But the beauty of that is with Rhumbix, you can digitize your base scope and your non-base scope work all in one place. Finally, on top of that, many of the workflows that we've just described, timekeeping, production and progress reporting, very quantitative in nature. And actually where the construction industry struggles in many cases and where ERPs struggle for definite is capturing a lot of the contextually relevant qualitative information about what's happening on job sites. So timekeeping, production tracking will tell you how much happened, will give you the numbers associated with activities in the field, but it doesn't really tell you what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and what needs to change tomorrow to come up with a better outcome. And that's where the Rhumbix Daily Construction Report tool comes into play. So the qualitative and the quantitative come together. And collectively, what it delivers is very, very data-rich insights that not only tell you what happened, but how you can change outcomes tomorrow and moving forward. And collectively, that is starting to become more of an operating system for your construction projects. It meets the basic needs and requirements of workflows, but more importantly, it's starting to generate the very insight-rich information that people are really struggling for on job sites that are practically what you need to make changes to your operations moving forward. So most of those workflows that I've just described are very labor-centric. Yes, you can include materials, you can include equipment tracking to gather those other resource-centric elements that need to be tracked that drive, the cost on your jobs. But beyond that, from a foreman's perspective, what are the other things that a foreman needs to do every single day? They're responsible for safety, they're responsible for quality, as well as their productivity. And typically, you can't have a productive job site if you're not paying attention to safety and quality. Those three things go hand in hand. So what Rhumbix actually allows your companies to do is to take those workflows, safety and quality that might also be done on paper or in other workflows and bring those into a single platform for the foreman as well. And actually that drives a lot of compliance. It drives a lot of work process opportunity for optimization. Because if you have all of that information in one place, there's real data richness by bringing those things together into a single platform. And you can also start to understand work process elements whereby if somebody has done one workflow but not the other, there's an opportunity to correlate the two to find out, where do we have gaps in our workflow that might otherwise not be apparent until far too late in the process. Toolbox talks and time cards are a prime example. Toolbox talks should be done daily in much the same way as a time card, and you should never have a craft worker who has a time card entry who has not also signed a toolbox talk. And so Rhumbix gives you the opportunity to aggregate those data sets together and create very, very powerful insights. A big focus of Rhumbix primarily is on data. And this is a key part of what we think about when we bring our product to companies is, you may have a digital solution for timekeeping and daily reporting and safety and quality and T&M tickets and all of the above. But how do you actually make sense of all of the data that it contains? And when you have 5 or 6 different solutions, potentially bringing all of those together into a structured data warehouse, or even notwithstanding a data warehouse, a structured approach for making sense of that data can be very, very expensive. If you need to invest in integrations for all of them, flattening that data, making it structured, bringing it all into a way that makes sense, building analytics and reports off the back of that with BI solutions, the more tools you have to generate that data, the more expensive it becomes. And in many cases, these solutions don't have good data sets available to them that you can access via API or with business intelligence tools. And then, of course, you need to have people on staff who are able to build those APIs, get the data into reporting tools. And for many specialty self-performed contractors, that is a significant expense and fundamentally a skill set that they don't need or want to invest in. So the beauty of Rhumbix is that we've done that for you. We've embedded data warehousing tools, we've embedded business intelligence tools to make those very high cost but high value resources and outcomes more generally available to our customers. And so our whole focus is on data, not just digitization, but actually deriving value from that information as well. And finally, before I dive into a quick demonstration, a little bit about our architecture. So we're a very modern technology company built on Amazon Web Services, cloud hosted, work on tablets and mobile phones, but also with a strong web-based component for making that data accessible to not only folks in the field, but also folks in the office who need to make sense of the information. But generally speaking, we're very API first. So our whole premise is that we want to be able to integrate into your ERPs and your sources of record to make sure that Rhumbix is fed by the solutions that host that data, ERPs, payroll companies, HR management systems for labor, equipment management, asset management, inventory management where we need to, but also that when the data is generated in Rhumbix, that we can push it to those places that we need. And that could be ERP solutions, it could be project management tools, it could be different business intelligence tools or data warehouses or other specialty software solutions for asset management, service management, work order management, et cetera, et cetera. So Rhumbix should be considered in the context of what you already do, where your existing systems have APIs, relatively straightforward to plug into those. Unfortunately, however, many software companies that support the construction industry haven't really invested in APIs. So some of the more legacy software solutions maybe struggle to have integrations. Even in those circumstances, we've got mechanisms to interface with those pretty effectively to make sure that data flows between them in a very seamless way. And we've grown up in the context of software tools that are not as modern as ours. And in that case, maybe cannot be fully integrated, but nevertheless, we've still got many, many ways in which we can allow data to flow seamlessly between the two of them. So with that being said, I want to spend a few minutes just diving into a few components of the Rhumbix workflow, demonstrate some of the areas where Rhumbix information can be generated in the mobile app, how it can be viewed, and what some of the data looks like within some of our core elements. So timekeeping, daily construction reporting as an example, and a quick example of some of our business intelligence reporting off the back end of it. So just going to run through a quick demo of the Rhumbix platform. And I'm going to talk about 2 different components, one of which is the mobile that you'll see over here, and then the web platform on the right-hand side. The web platform, I demonstrate 2 components, one of which is the setup, and the other is the data review, approval, and the management of all the information that your field personnel capture. First thing to talk about is company settings. Rhumbix will sit and play nice with your ERPs. Rhumbix will respect the ERPs and other softwares like payroll, HRMS, as the sources of truth. In terms of labor, we'll pull down all of your employees, including all of those folks that have roles in Rhumbix, foremen, PMs, admins, payroll admins, execs, will pull down employee IDs, first name, last name, trade, classifications, their role in Rhumbix. You can assign equipment to them so that you can track truck to operator or equipment to operator associations in the system. If you want to do materials management or equipment management in the system, say as part of T&M, material requests, field material requests, or POs, then we have the ability to ingest both materials in the system, but also equipment. And this information can be tied back into ERPs for asset management and resource management workflows. In the system as well, we also have a platform called Glow. And Glow is a very powerful feature that allows you to reflect your organizational hierarchy in the platform. So if you've got divisional hierarchy, geographical hierarchy, or even project hierarchy, you can reflect that in the system and use that to manage the relationship between project managers and jobs, craft workers and jobs. But also if you have specific workflows that maybe apply to one part of the world than another, for instance, you've got a specific daily construction report in New York City because that's what they require there. You can have a daily report that is set up only for those projects. Similarly with Shift Extras, which is our ability to create very specific rules in the platform for tracking those non-timekeeping payroll variables, very characteristic of union environments, but they also pertain to certified payroll. You can set up the system to track things like changes in trade, classification, other modifiers that might affect what somebody gets paid, reimbursements, per diem, mileage, travel time, anything like that can be set up in the system. And then you can manage which projects those rules apply to based on geography or other hierarchy in the system. So you can create a very bespoke scenario in the system that allows you to track the specifics that apply based on union agreement, based on project settings or owner requirements, whatever those may be. Very much not a one-size-fits-all type scenario, but that's just characteristic of how the construction industry operates. So very easy to set the system up. At the project level of detail, once you've got a job spun up in the system, very easy to pull across elements that pertain specifically to that job. So from a timekeeping perspective, you need to pull in the project phase codes, cost codes, budgeted hours, budgeted quantities, and that allows you then to set up the specifics within the platform that allows a foreman in the field to do timekeeping or to assign work orders to T&M tickets, etc. And we don't mandate any sort of format or structure for cost codes. Whatever you've budgeted, whatever you've loaded into the ERP, that flows across into the system. So at that point in time, the projects are set up with budgets, phase codes, cost codes, budgeted hours, budgeted quantities, and you can hide cost codes and make them active or inactive based on where you're at in the job. Makes it super easy to control what activities people in the field see. The beauty of that is that if you want to increase the number of cost codes that you track against, because you want to get more detailed and more granular with your tracking, but you don't want to overwhelm or confuse the foreman, you can really create a very curated list of activities that the foreman in the field can see. Finally, from a T&M perspective, if you wanted to load rates in from a T&M job, or have rates that are in there so that when a T&M ticket is created, they are pre-priced, you can include that in the system as well for both labor, equipment, and materials. Moving over to the mobile app now, I'm really showing you where the rubber meets the road for the foreman's perspective. I'll demonstrate a time card. I'll demonstrate copying that data across to a daily construction report or a T&M ticket, show you a little bit about how production data gets into the system, show you really in a few minutes how a foreman can do much of what they need to do every single day. So from a foreman's perspective, I'll do the time card first of all. As a foreman, I open up the app. I'm going to go through and I can select the projects that I'm working on. I can do timekeeping for multiple projects in the same day if I need to. Say a foreman's looking after multiple sub jobs on a large project, very easy to do timekeeping for large groups of people across jobs. I've got 8 folks selected on my crew. I can make them active or inactive if I need to. And then finally, I'm going to come through and I'm going to have 4 cost codes on my job today. I'm going to do timekeeping for today. Hit next. Here, this is where I have the ability to do timekeeping for my crew. So I can select multiple people and do timekeeping for that crew. And you'll see here, I've actually set up modifiers in the system. So if I want to go through and modify a particular cost code with a variable and say this particular person is operating a piece of equipment, this particular person is working as a different trade or classification on that day, I can do so. So here you'll see I've given everybody 8 hours. And from a modifier's perspective, those hours have been set up to apply an apprentice modifier. I'll go back and you'll see there are a balance of folks who haven't got a time card. So I'm going to go through and select them. And I'm just going to come through and give them 8 hours against that activity. Save changes. At this point, everyone's got their 8 hours of time. And you can allocate time to multiple cost codes in a day. You can mark individuals as absent if you need to, and so that you can actually track absence and attendance in the system similarly. Having done the time entry, if I want to come through and do production tracking in the system as well, very easy to come through and say how many widgets were installed. And if you want to go into a high level of fidelity, you can actually go through, take a photograph, and append that to a time card. You can even use a dictate feature to add really contextually rich information to a time card so that folks who are looking at production historically understand what was driving outcomes. You can also go through and add notations to the time card so that your time, your production, and your notes about what happened is all documented in one place. At that point, the time card is pretty much done. I'm going to submit the work shift. Oh, no, I'm not. I've missed time for someone. Who is missing time? That person's missing time. So at this point, you'll see I've submitted time for 7 people for 48 hours. It's already been submitted. The platform works fully offline if you need it to. And the time card is 100% done. I can initiate a workflow where craft workers can sign their time cards either from the foreman's device or remotely. And that timekeeping information will immediately show up on the web. One quick feature that I particularly like is our ability to take timekeeping data and roll that across to a daily construction report, a toolbox talk, a safety report, or even a T&M ticket. So in this case, a T&M ticket with cost coding. With a few clicks of a button, I've gone through and I've populated some of the information that has already been entered from a time card in my T&M ticket. So I can go through and now fill out a T&M ticket. And you'll see here, the labor has been entered. I can come through and I can add equipment information. I can add materials, non-standard materials, subcontractors, add attachments, and in the work of seconds, generate a T&M ticket that has also now been submitted and made available. So there's an awful lot more on the system you can do from a field forms perspective, from a timekeeping perspective, a lot more complexity, but certainly feel free to reach out to Rhumbix and we can dive into that with you. Just to show you very quickly what happens on the web platform now, though, from a time cards perspective, if I come down to the weekly view and select this reporting period, here's the time card that I just entered. If I come through and click on Monica now, you can see that the shift extra and the modifiers have been documented, that this information actually has a modifier associated with it. I can scroll across and see the 8 hours that were worked on which cost codes. You can see that that timekeeping record has actually been approved. And if I'd used any of the other shift extras, you'd see how they would also show up in a single holistic view so that all of your data is there. This information here is just showing timekeeping for a particular project, but actually this view will show you timekeeping data broken out by project, by foreman, by trade, by classification. So you can very quickly and easily see all of your timekeeping record in a single holistic view. And with features like find and search and filter, you can navigate to see data based on any of the attributes that you're tracking in the field. So if you want to see modifiers, changes in trade or classification, people that have reimbursements, people with absences, you want to filter data by foreman, you can do that very, very easily in the system. This information also allows you to go through and manage all of your approvals. So project managers, superintendents, payroll teams can come in and very, very easily drill down and filter information by project and come through and adjust the status and approve time. Time can be approved in bulk. It can be approved by project, by individual. Very, very flexible in terms of incorporating those approvals in the system. And then that information can actually flow through to exports. So if you're using a CSV export, For instance, a company with an ERP that doesn't support an integration, very, very easy to get that data out of Rhumbix via a simple CSV file that is configured exactly to the way you need it to work, so that you can just upload this information straight into your ERP. For many folks, an integration is where they want to go. Typically, we have very, very large companies that run their entire organizations off the back of a CSV upload for different reasons. But ultimately, getting started with the platform is where on a CSV basis is very, very defendable. So a few bits and pieces in addition, if you want to understand production tracking in the system, very, very easy for foremen to go in, enter production tracking. And then we have different web-based views where you can come in and do your true up and your reconciliations. You can see quantities without hours, hours without quantities. It's a very powerful way where people can come in and review and true up what foremen have entered or project managers have entered. It'll combine your hours with your production metrics and start to give you some very, very high level indicators of budget health as it pertains to quantities against budget. If you are doing equipment tracking in the system, Rhumbix will also give you very high-level views of equipment allocations to cost codes, equipment utilizations across jobs day by day, week over week, that you can then use to understand how your equipment is being utilized across jobs. And then getting into our field form solution, I generated a T&M ticket moments ago. And so if you wanted to come down and look at field forms, and I did a T&M with cost coding a second ago, you come down here. You'll see the T&M ticket that I generated moments ago. So you can see how the web platform allows you to view data almost immediately as it's entered in the field. So in the case of a T&M ticket, the T&M ticket was pre-priced based on the labor that you entered from timekeeping. So there's a really strong relationship between timekeeping and T&M. The idea is we don't want foremen to have to double enter information. It can feed multiple different workflows from a single bit of data entry. In this case, a cost-coded price T&M ticket based on the labor that was entered on the mobile app. That's a workflow that can be very manual in nature, and in the Rhumbix system took moments to generate. So Rhumbix has a vast amount of functionality on the web, fully embedded reporting solutions, multiple different workflows that you can digitize in the platform. This is highly configurable. So we take companies' workflows, work with them to design, think how a paper-based process can be moved into the digital world, thinking about opportunities for process optimization, data integrity, reusing data across multiple workflows, bringing multiple different elements of field reporting into a single workflow so that all the data that a foreman may need to generate can be incorporated into one or two or fewer workflows. And that all drives process optimization and data integrity. The final part about it is really around Rhumbix reporting. So we have an embedded business intelligence tool that can be used to generate, reporting as you guys need. Just to do a very quick example, this is one that, will show you cost codes by employees. So if you want to understand how many cost codes an individual is working on in a particular week, very, very easy to spin that up. And you can see here, we've got lots of different embedded reports that we've developed. This is just a snapshot, my test account that's talking about a variety of different ways of representing employee data. So you can see employee hours by cost codes, employee time cards with productivity, timekeeping summaries. There's all sorts of ways to cut and slice the data. And ultimately, what we've seen over the many, many years of building Rhumbix is that if there's a way in which data can be represented, a construction company will always want it a little bit different. And Rhumbix will support that. So that's been a bit of an introduction to the Rhumbix platform. Hopefully this has been helpful. There is a vast amount more that Rhumbix can do that I've not had an opportunity to demonstrate in the time that you've had available. But if you're interested in understanding a bit more about what Rhumbix can do, want to have a conversation with us about how Rhumbix can move the needle for you guys, either on standardizing on timekeeping or consolidating multiple different tools down into one, developing a more enhanced data strategy driven off real-time field data, how Rhumbix integrations might work, what we can do to save money on spend, in these sort of challenging times. There's a real opportunity for cost avoidance by standardizing on one tool instead of using multiple versions of other softwares. Rhumbix can help in all of those endeavors. So reach out to us, Rhumbix.com for the website, sales@rhumbix.com to reach out to the sales team, and myself or one of my colleagues will be happy to walk you through this in a bit more detail. Like I say, we've been doing this for a long period of time, have some really good keynote customers that will be happy to talk to you if you're interested in referrals to understand what we've done for them. You know, we have some of the largest construction companies in North America using the platform for thousands of their employees every single day. We'd be happy to walk you through it. So with that in mind, really appreciate your time. Any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks a lot.